novel Darkroom by Lila Quintero Weaver focuses on racism, identity, and growing up. Throughout the graphic novel, the issues of racism and segregation between white people and people of color is portrayed through the eyes of a young narrator, whose family emigrates from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Marion, Alabama, when she is 5 years old. The whole novel is in black and white, giving it an overall darker tone, since the shading of the images naturally makes everything darker. Though the novel is set in a different time period, around the 1960s, much of the racism and the controversy that is discussed is still very much existent in today's society. The graphic short starts off pretty subtle, telling the story of the narrator and so on, but as it continues on, the racial themes become much more evident, especially as our narrator matures. The particular pages I will be focusing on are 67 through 81. These pages primarily focus on segregation, discrimination, and classification between black people and white people in that era. Through the eyes of a young narrator who hasn't quite grasped everything there is to understand about racism and its conflicts in Alabama. On the first panel on page 67, the narrator tells us about the author John Howard Griffin, whom she reads about in a book called Black Like Me. It discusses how he went undercover as a black man, using drugs to darken his skin. He then went on to witness, quote, the black experience, quote. This can be used in comparison to Rachel DeLisle, who is a trans black, and the controversy that goes along with that, and what is considered taking it too far. The controversial aspect of Rachel DeLisle's transformation is that she identifies herself as black and claims to be part of a culture that has a history of pain and hardship that she never had to go through. Throughout these panels and pages, there are several examples of segregation between white people and people of color. Pages 67, 70, and 71 are all examples of how division and segregation have existed between white and black people. On page 67, we see the divided sinks, and Lila discussing the hardships that blacks in that era had to endure. Especially on pages 70 to 71, we see that this division seems to start at birth and even continue on after death, which is very questionable. Why were white people still considered to be superior to blacks even after death? The panel on page 70 in particular caught my eye because of the way it is designed and its layout. The babies are obviously separated by race, but also by gender. The white babies are on top of the page and the black babies are on the bottom, which could signify white supremacy starting at birth. I don't know whether the author intended there to be any actual significance associated with this, but the white babies are lined up as baby girl and baby boy, while the black babies are lined up as baby boy and baby girl. On pages 80 and 81, Lila talks about Lissy and how she was made fun of and criticized for having naturally big lips, and tries to go for an Anglo smile by tucking her lips against her gum. When Lissy first comes to America, she wishes she was more American and hates her natural nose. Today, plastic surgery is very common, and having big lips is a trend many women follow by getting lip injections and such to plump up their lips. highly influential figure in today's society regarding this trend is Kylie Jenner. Kylie naturally has very thin lips, and she states that the size of her lips has been an insecurity of mine all my life. This is ironic, because Lissy was shamed for having big lips, something that women pay a lot of money for these days. But when she tried to hide them for a picture, she was also criticized by the photographer, who told her that her smile looked completely artificial. Kylie Jenner's lips, on the other hand, are a huge aspect of what gained her so much fame, ranging from her lip kits to fashion, and she influences many girls and women even though her lips are just a cosmetic surgery. Another theme that these pages portray are the differences between how white people and people of color acted towards one another and were treated. On page 68, we see the things Black patients, maids, and people of color in general had to do, including sitting inside a separate waiting room, using different entrances, etc. Page 69 gives us several panels worth of examples as to how white men and Black men acted towards each other, as well as on page 69 we see the differences in the way men of both color look at women of the opposite color. On the first panel, the white man greets the Black man in a more casual tone, while the Black man uses more respectful language. In the last panel, we see a Black man who appears to be glancing at a white woman walking by. Another Black man shames him for this. In this panel, the two Black men are drawn in detail while the white woman in the background is only outlined, which is interesting. The differences are obvious, especially to Lila, who notices the segregation on her own without being educated by her parents. Again, on page 72, we see the segregation in the movie theater, where Lila notices that Black people were forced to sit in the balcony. The panels on page 74 are interesting because we see the contrast between Black and white people within the town, through the simplistically drawn family and the well-shaded and more defined people in the background. Finally, on page 75, we see the narrator offer an African American boy some paper, but he refuses to take it, leaving her puzzled. I think that the boy didn't accept the paper because of the racial conflicts and segregation going on at the time in Alabama, and he didn't want to appear as though he needed help or support. The narrator, Lila, was confused by this because she hadn't quite grasped this concept yet. Overall, the novel has an aesthetic which goes well with the seriousness of the themes present throughout the novel. The immense detail of the images naturally makes the whole novel darker, engaging the reader into the grim reality of that time period. It also leaves the reader in a certain thoughtful state of mind, as he or she sees the themes develop throughout the novel, during the time that Lila becomes more familiar and exposed to them.